In the cool, pre-dawn light, on the fringes of the vanished Saraswati River, 7000 BC, the land shivers with promise. This is an era long before pharaohs ascend in Egypt or ziggurats punctuate the Sumerian skyline. Here, hunter-foragers gather along grassy banks drawn by the life-giving floods. When annual monsoons recede, they leave behind dark, silty soil so rich that wild grasses stand nearly waist-high, clustering with wild wheat and barley. Families begin to settle, constructing small round huts with mud walls and thatched roofs. A simple pottery jar balances near each doorway, painted in swirls of red ochre and black, hinting at new experiments in food storage. Herds of zebu cattle and goat meander lazily at the river's edge as villagers domesticate animals for milk, hides, and ritual feasts, a pattern that will echo in South Asian rural life for millennia. Stone blades and sickles scrape across the ground, harvesting wild grain as children scatter chaff into the breeze. Settlements sprout in careful clusters, a few huts at first, then more, connected by rough earthen paths and ringed by low, protective mounds. Life here is hard, but fecund. Scavenging gives way to sourdough and hand-tilled crops, and the first traces of burials suggest new ceremonies for honoring the dead. The ancient Saraswati's shifting courses reshape the land each flood season, depositing fresh silt and carving new islets. Some decades, the river widens into vast wetlands. In others, drought shrinks it to bouldery trickles. These cycles of bounty and scarcity pressure communities to adapt, to store grain, to share labor, and to celebrate the rituals of planting and harvest. Generations pass, each leaving broken pottery and burnt bones beneath the alluvial plain. In the shadows of these early riverbanks, time stretches quietly. By night, fires glow in tight circles. Elders recount tales of rainfall patterns and buried ancestor stones, their words lost to the ages. Yet these villages lay the invisible scaffolding for cities yet unimagined. Mehrgarh, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, all seated along ancient watercourses that will one day fade to dust. 7 millennia before today, the Indus Valley's slow awakening begins, its rhythm keyed to the whisper and roar of water, its destiny entwined with the pulse of vanished rivers and sun-baked clay. The scent of smoke rises on the Mehrgarh plain, c. 6500 BC, as the first Neolithic settlers arrive. They come from the west, crossing mountain passes with goats, sheep, and seeds packed in clay jars, pioneers searching for gentler land. By the river's elbow, they find soil ripe for planting and a thin ribbon of reeds for their livestock. Fields of barley and wheat sprout in checkerboard patches, while stands of date and jujube trees mark seasonal campsites. Villagers quickly raise simple mud-walled houses, round at first, and later squared off for easier roofing and space. Each home is 1 or 2 rooms, with beaten earth floors and insulation of reeds daubed with clay. Outside, small grain pits dot the compound, lined with basketry and baked by the sun to keep rodents at bay. By 6000 BC, at least 200 people inhabit Mehrgarh, swelling to near 3,000 by 5000 BC, one of the largest settled populations on Earth at the time. Domesticated goats and sheep graze on the scrub beyond the outer huts, tended by children who learn the old ways of herding. Cows, still wild, occasionally tangle with reed fences. Villagers experiment with taming them for milk and draft work, a signal leap in food security. Bone tools and fishing nets emerge near seasonal pools as the people diversify their diets with fish, mollusks, and wild fruits. A slow transformation unfolds in these settled clusters. The earliest pottery appears, hand-built and fired in open pits, marked with simple lines. Storage lets these families buffer against failed harvests. As the centuries pass, they learn to breed crops for hardier, higher yields. Archaeologists find dozens of granaries and silos measuring over 1.5 meters wide, strategically arrayed for shared storage, a concrete sign of cooperation. The village layout grows more complex with each passing decade. By 5500 BC, rectangular houses link up in parallel rows, forming the world's first streets. Communal activity centers around grinding stones, fire hearths, and shade-giving trees as neighbors thresh, winnow, and make cheese together. This proto-town, with its fenced animal pens and packed granaries, signals a foundation for urban life. Even in these humble beginnings, the Mehrgarh settlers show a restless energy. Each decade, the horizons of the plain expand. More fields sown, more animals tamed, new burials laid carefully beneath house floors. These Neolithic pioneers, settled for the first time in generations, sow the seeds not just of crops, but of a civilization that will one day rise in dust and stone. At the edge of Mehrgarh, around 6000 BC, dawn reveals a scene alive with quiet invention. Amid low mud brick houses, villagers gather beside simple kilns, their hands shaping wet clay into pots, bowls, and storage jars. Designs emerge, dot-encircled zigzags, looping bands of ochre and black, heralding the world's first decorated ceramics in South Asia. These pictorial motifs hold clues to ritual, identity, and the pulse of daily life. Ceramic shards unearthed from ancient refuse mounds tell a tale of experimentation. By firing pots longer and hotter, artisans coax shimmering red and gray hues, making vessels tough enough to last years. Some pots are minuscule, no wider than a thumb, which likely held incense or medicinal mixtures. Others stand half a meter across, storing grain for lean seasons and feeding the first communal feasts along the river's edge. But the ingenuity at Mehrgarh extends beyond pottery. Archaeological finds from burial sites astonish the modern world, ancient skulls bearing tiny drill holes in the molars. Under a microscope, these holes reveal whorls and wear from handheld flint tools, evidence of the world's oldest dental procedures. Long before Hippocrates, these Neolithic innovators treat cavities, perhaps for pain relief, perhaps as ritual. It's a stark testament to both the skill and curiosity residing in these early farmers. Tooth drilling, likely performed by expert hands, carries risk. Some villagers survive for years after. Others succumb to infection, as shown by the bone's healing or decay. Each burial with a drilled tooth becomes a time capsule, a glimpse into suffering, innovation, and perhaps even the beginnings of medical apprenticeship. Such burials, set near village centers and covered with ochre, hint at reverence for healers and the healed. Tools for these procedures: macritic drills, flint points, litter trash pits alongside broken beads and the skeletal remains of goats. Each artifact lays a brick in the foundation of a society complex enough to value skill, ritual, and resilience. Here, beneath the dawn sky of 6000 BC, innovation is both a daily act and a silent spark that will shape the horizon of the ancient world. Across the Indus-Saraswati plains, between 5000 and 4000 BC, green fields widen and settlements multiply. Over centuries, villagers learn the rhythms of seasonal flooding, digging irrigation ditches to catch and channel precious water. Every April, swollen rivers leave behind a quilt of fresh silt, inviting more intensive farming. The land blooms with barley, wheat, and lentils, staples that support a population swelling into the low thousands. New farming villages cluster along watercourses, close enough for exchange, but sufficiently spaced for each to maintain pastures and grazing rights. Archaeologists uncover networks of granaries, rectangular mud brick stores as broad as 3 meters by 5, designed for collective use and easier protection. The remains of large hearths ring these villages, blackened from communal meals, Ice Age bone feasts, and the celebration of successful harvests. Villagers develop more advanced plows, carved from hardwood, which double the area a family can till in a season. Herds of cattle, now reliably tame, supply both milk and muscle, dragging plows through heavy river clay. The surpluses grow so steady that kilns churn out pottery year-round, some pieces marked with the first geometric stamp seals. As food stores rise, so does craft and social complexity. Beads of steatite and carnelian appear, shaped by skilled hands and likely traded between neighboring settlements. Occasionally, archaeologists find the burnt bones of cattle, evidence of feasting on ceremonial occasions. Each feast, each shared project, reinforces both competition and bonds between villages. By 4000 BC, the villages begin to form visible clusters with satellite hamlets orbiting central hubs. Communication, marriage alliances, and trade ensure that ideas, new tools, rituals, and genes flow across the plain. This connected quilt of settlements, strung along life-giving rivers, provides the blueprint for the next leap: the forging of true cities on the Indus plain. By 3300 BC, the great Indus and ancient Saraswati rivers flow in wide, meandering ribbons across a landscape transformed. These twin floodplains anchor a teeming network as hundreds of settlements dot the map, from the salt-laced deserts of Kutch to the snow-fed tributaries reaching up into Baluchistan. Here arises a new world. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro rise as city-states, their outlines traced by fields, marshes, and trade tracks leading into distant mountain passes. Annual monsoon floods renew the plains with silt, but their waters also connect hundreds of lesser settlements in a vast, pulsing web. Each rainy season, boats laden with grain and firewood drift from village to village, carrying rumors, marriage partners, and fresh pots. By c. 3200 BC, settlements like Kotdiji and Amri cluster along key river junctions, forming early capitals surrounded by clusters of smaller villages within a day's walk. The numbers are staggering for their time. Archaeologists have located more than 2,000 sites tied to the broader Indus world, spread across nearly 500,000 square kilometers. Cities like Harappa command regional trade, while satellites and hamlets supply labor, grain, and raw materials: lapis from Afghanistan, copper from Rajasthan, shells from the coast. This great web binds disparate peoples with the regular pulse of flood, trade, and ritual. Rivers dictate the pace and fortune of civilization. When the Indus swells, fields burst with promise. In bad years, settlements are forced to adapt or move, pressing the terrain for every margin of survival. Yet, through flood and drought, this geography of water becomes the crucible for new architectures, languages, and systems of power. Here, between two rivers, the stage is set for cities destined to rank among the ancient world's greatest marvels. Along the riverbanks of the Indus and Saraswati, icy, 3200–3000 BC, the landscape witnesses a startling change as early cities take shape. Mud bricks, rectangular, uniform, and kiln-fired, are stacked layer upon layer, laying sturdy foundations for buildings that will stand for centuries. In cities like Kalibangan and Harappa, teams of workers align houses and streets in careful grids, plotting city blocks with mathematical precision. The new city layouts are not haphazard. Surveyors use chords and sightlines to ensure roads intersect at near right angles, forming quartered neighborhoods, each with its own wells, workshops, and storage yards. The walls of the first major granaries rise, some over 45 meters long, with ventilated air ducts and raised platforms for protection against flood and rodents. Central streets are wide enough for bullock carts, secondary lanes narrow, twisting between dense blocks of habitation. Within the thick outer walls, neighborhoods bloom with both public and private architecture. Some homes are modest, just 2 rooms with flat roofs, while others grow into multi-story dwellings with inner courtyards. City planners lay out drainage channels with baked brick linings beneath the streets, ensuring rainwater and household refuse flow quickly away from the living spaces. Even in earliest stages, civic engineering shows an ambitious communal vision. As cities grow, so do their populations. Early Harappa houses 15,000 or more, while smaller urban centers cluster between 5,000 and 10,000. The skyline transforms. Public baths, workshops, and warehouses punctuate residential sprawl. Massive defensive walls appear at city edges, some up to 7 meters thick, signaling a need for both security and social cohesion. This coordinated, purposeful urban design marks a shift. The leap from farming villages and scattered settlements to true metropolises of brick and order. These cities become magnets for traders, artisans, and farmers seeking both opportunity and the protection of walls baked under the furnace sun. By 3000 BC, the Indus Valley is no longer a land of villages. It is a world of cities on the rise. On the bustling streets of Harappa around 2600 BC, traders, priests, and scribes press tiny seals into freshly molded clay. Each seal carries cryptic marks, part animal, part symbol, a script unlike any other, mysterious even to modern scholars. The Indus script is born, its first appearance marked on thousands of inscribed tablets and stamp seals scattered from city centers to far-flung villages. These seals are usually square or rectangular, rarely more than 4 centimeters across, crafted from steatite and fired to achieve a resilient glaze. Engraved with intricate images of unicorns, bulls, elephants, or mythic beasts, each seal boasts up to a dozen linear symbols, dots, loops, diamonds, and fish-like curves. Some tablets bear as few as 2 marks, others show lengthy sequences, a coded language lost to the ages. The uniformity of script style across sites suggests a shared, possibly centralized tradition of record-keeping or ritual administration. Archaeologists unearth thousands of these seals at sites like Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, and Lothal, their count now exceeding 4,000 individual examples. The sites where seals cluster, warehouses, gateways, administrative quarters, hint at their importance for inventory, trade, and perhaps social status. Some are stamped onto bundles of goods bound for distant lands. Others are hung on cords as amulets or tokens of authority. Despite decades of study, no one has yet decoded the Indus script. The language behind it, whether Dravidian, Proto-Munda, or something lost, remains a fierce debate. Each new fragment excavated sharpens the puzzle. Why did a civilization so advanced rely on such spare, emblematic texts, and for what purpose? Seals link the Indus world to distant cultures, as Sumerian records begin to mention the Meluha people, known for their trade and subtlety, yet never describing their language. With every fresh clay impression pressed by a deft thumb, the silent words of the Indus script ripple through the centuries. Its secrets wait in darkness, buried between baked bricks, whispering mysteries across the ages, drawing us ever deeper into the oldest unsolved riddle on the subcontinent. In the broad river valleys of the Indus and Saraswati, between 2600 and 1900 BC, civilization surges into its first golden age. Over 1,000 settlements now sprawl across the floodplains, From the Himalayan foothills to the Arabian Sea, some cities cover more than 200 hectares, their populations soaring past 40,000 at their zenith. Urban planners extend straight streets through massive city blocks. Sprawling networks of irrigation fields and bustling docks testify to the sophistication and ambition of the age. Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, Dholavira, and Lothal rise as jewels in the Indus crown. Their streets are paved with uniform bricks, and neighborhoods are stratified by craft, trade, and service. At the heart of each city lies a monumental citadel, encircled by walls up to 10 meters thick. Storerooms, granaries, spacious public courtyards, and vast assembly halls provide space for collective rituals and the management of food reserves. City populations cooperate on an unprecedented scale. Archaeologists have unearthed storerooms in Harappa with footprint areas over 800 square meters and single bricks that still bear the handprints of ancient laborers. Trade flourishes through river ports and caravan stations. Storage jars, copper tools, faience beads, ivory combs, and terracotta figurines flow to and from every quarter of the Indus world, while resource flows, tin for bronze, lapis lazuli, shells, cotton cloth, link the civilization to Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and the Persian Gulf. The curation and cataloging of goods, likely documented on the ubiquitous Indus seals, allows for both economic scale and urban stability. Ritual life deepens too. Great baths, fire altars, and possible assembly platforms mark communal sacred spaces, with certain neighborhoods reserved for priests or ritual specialists. Hundreds of carefully planned wells and bathing areas anchor daily customs of purification, binding city dwellers into cycles of worship, work, and repose. The sheer scale and coherence of these features reflect a shared ideology reaching hundreds of kilometers beyond any single city. On the edges of this world, scores of smaller towns and villages, each with their own wells, craftspeople, and mud brick lanes, link the cities with a hinterland. Together, these 1,000 settlements cradle a civilization, balancing complexity and order on a scale never before seen in South Asia. The golden age of the Indus Valley rises and hums, its rivers alive with boats and its markets echoing with the rhythms of a people utterly original in their dust and glory. In the heart of Mohenjo-daro, c. 2500 BC, the city expands with architectural ambition unmatched anywhere in the world. Wide, rectilinear streets stretch for over a kilometer, each meticulously oriented along cardinal axes. Neighborhoods are divided by main thoroughfares as much as 7 meters wide. The dense labyrinth of homes, constructed from millions of precisely molded bricks, rises 2 to 3 stories tall, with stairways winding up cool, shaded walls. This is not a city of chaos. It is a miracle of urban planning. Central to the Indus miracle is water management. Mohenjo-daro alone boasts more than 700 wells, some descending 5 meters below street level, each lined with perfectly set baked bricks. Nearly every household, whether in a modest back lane or a spacious upper-class district, has direct access to a well. Public drains, brick-lined and capped, run alongside streets, linked to private drains from houses and workshops. Wastewater flows in these channels by gravity, emptying far from living spaces. No city anywhere else in the 3rd millennium BC can rival this sanitation. Drain covers and drop shafts punctuate the public avenues. Inspectors, city officials, or craftspeople maintain these systems, lifting stone slabs to remove silt or repair broken bricks. Archaeological surveys reveal that some sewers run for hundreds of meters, traversing whole districts. This investment in infrastructure speaks to a communal ethos and trust in collective labor. Building heights and lot sizes tell another story. In the city's lower town, homes are tightly packed, 3, 4, even 5 to a block, while on the raised citadel, larger compounds with galleries and courtyards serve as administrative or elite residences. Massive granaries straddle the city's platform edges, their mud brick storage bins ventilated by brick air shafts and draining channels beneath raised floors. These granaries can hold hundreds of tons of grain, securing food for thousands throughout the long, dry weeks between monsoons. Urban order is enforced by geometry and social habit. The city grows not with sprawl, but by infilling gaps and heightening existing blocks. Even after 4,500 years, the baked bricks and grid-planned streets of Mohenjo-daro and its sister cities offer silent proof of a people who built for the ages, who saw in architecture the very bones of their civilization. On the citadel mound of Mohenjo-daro, around 2500 BC, the Great Bath sits luminous in the morning haze. Its brick-lined tank measures 12 meters long, 7 meters wide, and nearly 2.5 meters deep, held together by tightly laid bitumen mortar, a feat of engineering without equal in the ancient world. Steps descend from both ends, while small side chambers open off the main hall, possibly for changing, ritual preparation, or priestly supervision. The Great Bath dominates not only the cityscape, but also the imagination of its people. Each day, sunlight glints off the water's surface as townsfolk, perhaps chosen dignitaries, priests, or ritual initiates, approach with offerings, garlands, oils, or flickering lamps balanced in cupped hands. Across the Indus world, public baths echo this iconic space at Kalibangan, Dholavira, and Harappa, proof that cleansing, both physical and spiritual, shapes the core of communal life. Below the citadel, vast storehouses and granaries stand beside the bath, each compartmented with thick mud brick walls to separate grain, pulse, or trade goods. Some warehouses stretch over 50 meters, their raised platforms sheltering crops from floodwater and rodents. Archaeologists have found scales, sets of standardized stone weights, and even commodity tokens, clear evidence that economic order, cleanliness, and provisioning are deeply linked. Water is more than a daily necessity here. It is the axis of social order and spiritual discipline. Hundreds of wells and drains feed and empty the baths, reducing the risk of stagnant pools and disease. The city's ability to divert, store, and sanctify water fosters a civic culture where hygiene, ritual, and authority merge. The placement of the Great Bath and storehouses together hints at a governance rooted in shared resources and seasonal rites rather than dynastic palaces or ostentatious tombs. No statues of kings or warriors are found here, only the quiet geometry of water, brick, and an order that flows through every channel and space. In this synergy, the soul of Indus society finds its clearest expression: communal, practical, and deeply ritualistic. In bustling lanes and sunlit courtyards across the Indus Valley, c. 2400 BC, the air rings with the music of craft. Artisans in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and Lothal fashion tiny marvels: beads of banded carnelian, gleaming copper blades, agate inlays, shell bangles, and figurines in terracotta and faience. Specialized workshops cluster in city quarters, some barely 5 meters wide, others sprawling over rooftops, each echoing with the low hum of drills, the crack of stone, and the whir of grinding wheels. Indus beadmakers are the envy of the ancient world. Using bow drills tipped with emery or hard quartz, they bore flawless holes through carnelian nodules and lapis lazuli, some as small as 0.5 millimeters in diameter. It takes hours, sometimes days, to finish a single, perfectly symmetrical bead. In Harappa alone, archaeologists have recovered over 30,000 finished and partially worked beads. Whole necklaces would be worth a year's grain for a skilled craftsman. Copper, too, courses through workshops. The Indus people source copper ore as far as the Aravalli Hills, a 650-kilometer trek from their heartland, using cleverly designed crucibles for smelting. Tools and ornaments, chisels, razors, mirrors, and fishhooks flow both to local markets and to distant ports. Smelting sites like Lothal and Ganeshwar track a copper output reaching several tons per year by 2300 BC. Shell working emerges as another distinct craft. Pearl oyster shells, strip mined from the Gujarat coast or Oman, are sawn, polished, and drilled to make armlets, rings, combs, and ritual objects. Workshops in Nageshwar and Balakot turn out thousands of shell pieces each season, their patterns echoing motifs seen on seals and pottery. Highly prized are segmented bangles and etched discs, some traded hundreds of kilometers inland. Other goods reveal the Indus mastery of materials. Terracotta figurines, bulls, mother goddesses, carts serve as tokens for ritual or play. Faience, a glazed quartz ceramic, glitters in tiny amulets and tiles. Urban economies are so tightly integrated that raw materials travel hundreds of kilometers. Lapis from Afghanistan, tin and copper from Rajasthan, conch from Makran, carnelian from the Narmada. Every bead, blade, and shell glimmer testifies to a civilization whose hands shape treasures both humble and priceless, far beyond the limits of its rivers and dust. On the banks of the Indus and at the mouth of the Gulf of Kambat, c. 2350 BC, bustling docks load cargo under the burning sun. Ox carts roll into Lothal's wharf, laden with lapis lazuli, carnelian beads, and bales of raw cotton, the earliest on Earth. From here, riverboats paddle downstream or slip out into the sea, vanishing over the horizon on journeys that span more than 2,000 kilometers. Far to the west, in city-states like Ur and Lagash, Sumerian scribes puzzle over a distant land they call Meluha. Their cuneiform tablets, dated around 2350 BC, record goods from Meluha: timber, copper, ivory, and black wood, as prized imports. Cylinder seals depict Meluhan traders, clean-shaven, draped in patterned cotton, bearing cargo and their own translated interpreter. Archaeologists trace the trail back, finding Indus seals in Sumer and Akkad, as well as etched Mesopotamian ornaments amidst Indus ruins. Trade caravans do not journey alone. Along the way, they pass staging posts, dotted with wells, inns, and guarded granaries between Dolavira, Sutkagandor, and Shortugai near the distant lapis mines in Afghanistan. Overland camel and donkey caravans traverse the Thar Desert, while deep draft vessels with inward curved prows ferry cargo across the Arabian Sea. The volume impresses. Even conservative estimates suggest several tons of copper, beads by the 100,000, and cloth bolts leave Indus ports each year. But what fuels this relentless movement? The Indus Valley exchanges its distinctive shell bangles, carnelian, cotton, and timber for Mesopotamian silver, tin, luxury ceramics, and rare foodstuffs. The script inscribed on many seals, Indus symbols on one side, Sumerian or Akkadian on the other, speaks of interpreters and brokers navigating transactions centuries before coinage was invented. Cargoes are protected by stamped seals, and weights are standardized to less than 0.05 grams, the world's most precise until the Roman Empire. For nearly 500 years, these trade arteries pulse, forging connections not just of goods, but of ideas, status, and technology. Meluhan words enter Sumerian lists. Some Indus goods turn up in the tombs of Akkadian kings. Across the desert and the sea, Indus society expands beyond borders, its crafts and codes woven into the story of an ancient, interconnected world. Strolling the bustling avenues of Mohenjo-daro, circa 2300 BC, you encounter a city thrumming with everyday life. Sunlight filters through roof holes as merchants unbolt heavy wooden shutters, spreading out baskets filled with barley, millet, and lentil cakes for early morning sale. The air is thick with the scents of roasting grain, brewing beer, and fragrant sesame oil smoldering on hearths. Each household clusters around a central courtyard, bounded by two-story brick walls and shaded by cloth awnings. Women gather at communal wells, their stone bangles clicking as they fill jars or gossip about the latest caravans to arrive from distant Makran or Gujarat. Stone whorls spin in expert hands, twisting raw cotton or wool into thread. In the corner, children braid each other's hair or herd goats through narrow alleys with quick, practiced shouts. Shops line the main streets, potters shaping clay on slow-turning wheels, bead stringers at workbenches hunched over tiny carnelian spheres, fishmongers spreading out today's catch beside salt-packed barrels. Inside homes, floors are swept clean with bundled reeds as men patch baskets, sharpen copper sickles, or carve ivory combs. Many houses have indoor bathing areas, small brick platforms with sloped drains and a bucket of cool well water, offering privacy and daily cleanliness few of the world's cities can match. Grain is stored in raised earthen bins or sturdy jars, and family fortunes are measured in the contents of tightly sealed storage rooms, each tracked with stamped clay tokens. Public order is kept by unspoken rules and the occasional official. Weight inspectors pace the streets, checking traders' stone cubes that must match the city's exacting standards, sometimes to within 1/10 of a gram. Night falls to the sound of laughter and music. Flutes and bullock bells mingling with voices in hidden courtyards. The city is secure in its order, vibrant in its diversity. 1,000 customs move through its streets, tying daily routines to an ancient rhythm of collective life and quiet glory. Morning breaks over Harappa, c. 2200 BC, and the city stirs without any towering palace or stone-faced king. Archaeologists puzzle over this riddle. No grand thrones, royal tombs, or bloodthirsty war monuments have ever surfaced in Indus ruins. Instead, governance seems diffused and invisible. Weights, sealed storage rooms, and standardized bricks anchor the routines of daily order, overseen perhaps by councils rather than monarchs. In this urban world, regulation is everywhere without ever being ostentatious. Distribution of food and raw materials relies on uniform D-shaped weights, some just 13 grams, others a kilo or more, found in marketplaces, warehouses, and household bins. Merchants submit their own cubes for inspection against the city standard, and grain is leveled and measured into shared stores. Clay seal impressions from sites across the valley bear recurring motifs, suggesting their owners hold civic office or sanction the movement of goods. Law and custom seem encoded in architecture rather than decrees or parade grounds. Entryways funnel traffic through narrow turns, ideal for monitoring visitors and maintaining privacy. Public wells and drains are shared, but their pristine maintenance points to oversight and shared rules, likely imposed by community councils or trusted elders. City blocks persist for centuries with almost no change in size or orientation. Even the bricks, 28 centimeters by 14 by 7, follow rules that span hundreds of kilometers and multiple generations. Settlements expand and contract in step with surplus or scarcity, but without the signs of violent conquest or sudden regime change that typify ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia. Instead, A system of consensus and regulation upholds the city's stability. The lack of ostentatious burial goods for elites or any written edicts suggests authority is communal, not personal. Here is a civilization that, for centuries, managed complexity and growth with a discipline so subtle that its leaders remain forever faceless in the dust. On a sun-soaked day in Harappa, c. 2100 BC, the archaeology of faith quietly endures. Seals pressed into soft clay expose a pantheon in miniature: the powerful humped bull, mysterious unicorn, pipal leaves curling in abstraction, and female forms, perhaps mother goddesses, arrayed in regal profile. One seal, found in a discarded well beneath a ruined house, features a horned deity seated cross-legged amid wild beasts, flanked by elephants and tigers, the so-called Proto-Shiva, or Pashupati, a god whose echoes still linger in the subcontinent's sacred stories. Ritual scenes play out in artifact after artifact. Small terracotta figurines, often female, stand with arms at their sides, adorned with elaborate jewelry or headdresses, likely symbols of fertility and protection. Clay firing sites double as altars. Burned offerings of grain, pulses, and ghee accompany the lighting of sacred hearths, their ashes meticulously swept and buried. Stone lingams and ringed yoni altars turn up in houses from Harappa to Kalibangan, hinting at worship rooted in fertility and duality. Religious practice infuses everyday spaces. In city neighborhoods, shrines, no bigger than a bread oven, tuck into side streets or the corners of homes, furnished with painted pots and rows of votive lamps. Processions wind through alleys on festival days, led by masked celebrants and the pounding of frame drums, their shadows flickering in bronze light. Pipal trees, revered as sacred, stand at the center of many courtyards, living altars anchoring the lives of generations. The sacred, however, leaves subtle footprints. There are no grand temples or stone statues of gods as seen in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Instead, Indus faith persists in humble tokens and daily rites. Water poured at wells, incense wafted through the air, intoned prayers left unrecorded in the silent script. The rhythmic pulse of Indus religion ties this ancient world together, its mysteries as enduring and as enigmatic as the unread seals that whisper through the dust. Late in the second millennium BC, between 2000 and 1900 BC, nature's rhythms break their ancient compact with the Indus Valley. From the summer hills, monsoon rains falter, while the Saraswati, once a mighty, life-giving river, shrinks year by year into braided strands and, at last, into a dry, pale scar across the plain. Archaeological trench layers thicken with silt and clay, recording brutal cycles of flood and drought that no city can long outrun. When rivers overflow, disaster sweeps in. Foundations of granaries are scoured by water 6 meters deep, entire neighborhoods buried by silt heavy enough to choke drains and topple city walls. Some sites, like Mohenjo-daro and Lothal, show abrupt layers of waterborne debris. Wells are clogged, streets erode into ankle-deep mud, hearths abandon their warmth beneath sudden tides. In other years, the heavens yield little. Fields go fallow, irrigation canals run dry, and granaries empty as the population endures famine. The impact is as much social as environmental. Once thriving urban centers shrink visibly. Harappa's carefully aligned streets fragment as houses are walled off for privacy. Public wells and drains, clogged and crumbling, give way to hastily dug pits. Disease follows hunger. Skeletons from late Mohenjo-daro bear the marks of stress, anemia, and epidemic. Food production drops sharply. Samples from the Ganges and Hakra regions suggest cereal yields halved within a generation, while cattle bones, once signs of abundance, dwindle in both number and size. As climate volatility intensifies, ancient patterns of trade and movement break. Caravans bypass abandoned ports, freshwater pools turn brackish, and once predictable rituals, sowing, reaping, market days, unravel. The very rivers that made the Indus world possible now conspire with a changing climate, carving the twilight of an age whose order no flood or feast can restore. In the aftermath of failing rivers and unraveling order, c. 1900s–1800 BC, the great cities of the Indus begin to sputter and fade. Populations decline precipitously. Mohenjo-daro, once home to perhaps 40,000, shrinks to a quarter of its peak within 2 generations. The signature bricks of the era grow smaller and cruder, while newer houses encroach upon abandoned public spaces. Streets narrow, courtyards are subdivided, and former wells fall into disrepair. Down every alley, archaeologists trace the slow abandonment of estates and workshops. Clues to crisis are everywhere. In Harappa, kilns blacken in hastily dug pits, once precisely stratified storage bins now clogged with cattle bones and household trash. Once grand civic buildings become makeshift granaries or even slab-walled hovels, while trash heaps rise where plazas once hosted feasts. Skulls and skeletons show stress marks, malnutrition, high infant mortality, even evidence of leprosy and tuberculosis in the last layers. Signs of short-lived violence appear. Burned walls, crushed gates, and skeletal wounds at key sites suggest the strain of famine and conflict. Trade with Mesopotamia collapses. Indus seals and weights vanish from the archaeological record west of Baluchistan by 1800 BC, as caravan routes shift and foreign ships avoid the silted harbors. Written records and inventories dwindle, and local crafts, beadmaking, shellwork, lose the polish and precision that once set them apart. Some settlements persist, but most ancient city mounds, once alive with ritual, music, and trade, fill gradually with wind-blown dust. Disease plays its part. Plague, waterborne illnesses, and crop blights devastate already stressed populations. Archaeological soil samples show concentrations of pathogens and parasites increase in the late urban phases. Family burials cluster at the edges of former city blocks, their gravestones unmarked. In the collapse of Harappan civilization, it is not a single catastrophe, but a slow, grinding series of blows, environmental, social, and economic, that leaves 1,000 years of brilliance buried beneath the alluvial dust. By 1800–1500 BC, the Indus heartland empties as its people pull up roots and begin their migration eastward. Once great cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, are left to crumble as residents abandon the brittle riverbanks and seek new beginnings along the resilient Ganges and Yamuna. The deserted streets of the west become overgrown with wild barley, jackal trails, and wind-blown earth, while fresh villages sprout in the monsoon-fed soils of the emerging Gangetic plain. The migration is not a panicked exodus, but a series of gradual shifts. Families, craftspeople, and grain farmers settle new land along the still reliable rivers of northern India, founding settlements like Perak and Bhagwanpura. Their construction methods subtly shift. Mud brick gives way to wattle and daub. Storage pits replace raised granaries, and domestic rituals adapt to new soils and seasons. Archaeological layers from this era are a patchwork. Copper harpoons appear beside Ganges fish bones, while carnelian beads are found with new pottery forms unique to the East. Village life flourishes under new and hybrid traditions. The incoming migrants integrate with indigenous communities, blending Indus patterns with local customs, cattle herding, house forms, ornament styles, and ways of organizing work. Burial styles and religious motifs borrow from both the Indus and their new neighbors, while agricultural diversity expands with the introduction of rice and millets, a vital innovation in wetter, eastern lands. Trade routes adapt, too. As ancient river ports silt up, the main arteries of commerce veer east, reconnecting with emerging cultures in the foothills and forests of North India. The Indus legacy does not vanish. Rather, it disperses. Its crafts, social structures, and rituals become seeds for later cultures, haunting the new Gangetic settlements like a half-remembered song. The story of the Indus is not just decline, but transformation. A civilization rerouted, evolving, and intermingling, forever shaping the destiny of South Asia's river worlds. Centuries pass, and by 1000 to 300 BC, the afterlives of the Indus world ripple through the remembered past. Later, Vedic hymns, composed as the new Aryan settlements spread eastward, whisper of mighty, vanished rivers. The Saraswati, praised as a goddess whose waters once flowed with limitless bounty. These texts hint at lost cities buried by sand and legend, mixing Indus echoes into the foundation myths of India's future spiritual landscape. Foreign empires come searching for the faded glory. By the 5th century BC, Persian Achaemenids annex the northwestern Indus valleys into their realm, mining ruins for bricks and tales. Alexander the Great's army crosses the Indus in 326 BC, marveling at city mounds and rumors of ancient urban gods now vanished. Greek chroniclers describe riverside towns with earthwork embankments, their bazaars thriving even in decay, and stone wells descending deep into old silt layers, though the secret of their earlier order is already lost. As India's first empires arise, the ghost of the Indus remains present. Mauryan kings reuse old citadels and granaries, constructing new capitals where ancient brick still lies thick beneath the soil. Archaeologists today sift through coins, pottery, and carved pillars that all converge on the same story. Each new dynasty, each new faith, builds on the work of those long-gone architects. Even 2,000 years after the last Harappan left, the bones of their world shape the dreams and ambitions of every conqueror who stumbles across the Indus plain. The memory of a civilization, sometimes distorted, often reimagined, shapes the identity of South Asia long after its rivers have shifted course. In ruins, song, and conquest, the Indus leaves an inheritance that future generations cannot help but seek. It is 1856 AD, beneath a pitiless Punjab sun, and British engineers labor to lay railway embankments along the old floodplains near Harappa. They need ballast for the tracks. Workers shovel ancient bricks, sun-baked, uncannily uniform, onto carts by the thousands. Just beneath the soil, relics begin to surface: stone weights, tiny seals incised with cryptic marks, and ghostly outlines of walls deeper than anyone has memory for. First curiosity, then confusion. Colonial officials note old bricks of unusual hardness, some stamped with strange, undeciphered symbols. Engineers debate whether these are remnants of Alexander's campaigns or the fabled cities mentioned in Sanskrit epics. Some say the slabs are so precisely cut and fired that they rival anything seen in Constantinople or Rome. By 1872, Alexander Cunningham, first director of the Archaeological Survey of India, collects bricks and artifacts, logging them for official records, but guessing these belong to a later Buddhist era. His reports, filed away and largely ignored, describe houses of prodigious age and wells built in geometric order. Meanwhile, railway lines run straight through Indus mounds, pulling more and more of the ancient masonry into the modern world with each rattling train. For decades, the skulls and seals uncovered at Harappa and later Mohenjo-daro are treated as curiosities, shipped to museums in Calcutta or London. The full truth, sleeping beneath the fields, remains unguessed. This is not a relic of Vedic, Greek, or even early Hindu culture, but a civilization far older, whose scale and order eclipse all that the Raj's scholars had yet imagined. A dormant chapter of the human story lies buried, awaiting the spade and the spark of recognition. Between 1911 and 1931, British and Indian archaeologists launched the first systematic excavations at Harappa and Mohenjo-daro. Sir John Marshall, appointed Director General of the Archaeological Survey of India, stands ankle-deep in dust and silt, directing teams beneath the searing Sindh sun. As laborers peel back up to 10 meters of accumulated earth, street grids, public baths, warehouses, and inscrutable ceilings reveal themselves layer by layer. Each discovery more extraordinary than the last. The scope is breathtaking. At Mohenjo-daro, skeletons are found cradled in collapsed houses beside pottery, necklaces, and even ancient bronze mirrors. Whole city blocks emerge from the sands, granaries the size of football fields, hundreds of tightly packed houses, public wells dotting every quarter, and a citadel topped by the sunken rectangle of the mysterious Great Bath. In Harappa, delicate faience beads and shell bangles spill from trash pits, confirming centuries of skilled craft and vibrant trade. What shocks the world is not just the age, dating to at least 2600 BC, prior to Egypt's pyramids, but the scale and uniformity. Each city's bricks match a precise ratio. Water systems and streets align perfectly north-south. Even the seals and weights from sites 600 kilometers apart are near identical. There are no palaces, no flashy royal tombs, no monuments to war. A civilization organized by civic order on an awe-inspiring scale. By the early 1930s, news spreads beyond India. Archaeological journals in London and New York hail the Indus as the third great cradle of human civilization, standing equal with Egypt and Mesopotamia. The buried story, long forgotten beneath fields and railway lines, finally steps into the light. A world of cities, artisans, and mysteries beyond any written record, waiting for a new generation to ask how dust could hide so much glory. From the mid-20th century through today, the Indus Valley civilization poses puzzles more profound than any tomb or treasure. Chief among these is the enigma of its script. Over 4,000 inscribed seals and tablets remain silent, their language undecoded despite a century of scholarly attacks and digital ciphers. Some champion a Dravidian language base, others suggest lost tongues. Every hypothesis yields as many questions as answers. The absence of kings, royal decrees, or monumental inscriptions only deepens the mystery. Another debate churns around the nature of Indus society. Unlike Egypt, Sumer, or China, there are no clear temples, no statues of deities or god-kings. The vast uniformity of city planning, weight systems, and material culture across 1,500 kilometers suggests powerful coordination, or perhaps a tightly woven network of civic councils and merchant guilds. Scholars parse artifact caches, isotopic residue, and site stratigraphy, seeking evidence of hierarchy, class, or priestly rule, but find only tantalizing fragments: horned masks here, ritual altars there, granaries and assembly platforms everywhere, peaceful or not. Some propose an almost utopian absence of warfare. No fortresses, few weapons, skeletons free of battle wounds. Yet, in the twilight years, there are hints of conflict: charred walls, smashed gates, arrowheads in the closing layers. The causes of collapse: climate, disease, invasion, trade disruption, remain a high-wire scholarly debate, with new excavations and laboratory tests shifting the answer every decade. Each spring, new teams from India, Pakistan, the US, and Europe dig into mounds and sift the dust, exploring forgotten city blocks with ground-penetrating radar, sequencing ancient DNA from bone fragments, and scanning seals into digital code. Drone flyovers map buried city grids, while scientists analyze ancient grains for climate signatures. In a world awash in data, the civilization story somehow grows richer, more intricate, and ever more mysterious, its secrets swirling with dust and possibility, daring the next generation to unlock them. Today, drone cameras sweep across the plains of Punjab and Sindh, capturing the quiet persistence of history beneath modern fields. Where once the Indus and Saraswati rivers raged and twisted, their beds now appear as dusty scars, graceful curves of barren earth bordered by emerald crops and distant brick kilns. City mounds, some rising 4 meters above the flat plain, interrupt the regular patchwork of wheat and sugarcane. Cattle wander over the buried streets of what were once the largest cities on Earth. These ancient sites are now embedded in the living landscape of India and Pakistan. In Harappa, the village named for the city sits a few hundred meters from the ancient walls. In Mohenjo-daro, rice paddies and cattle pens encroach upon old granaries as residents use fragments of 4,000-year-old brick for sheds and channels. Each monsoon reveals a new shard or bead tossed up by rain, treasures and clues woven into daily life and often overlooked by passers-by tending machines or herding goats. Rapid development pressures the remnants of the past. Some mounds have been leveled for roads or disassembled for modern bricks. Others are hidden beneath tangled acacia forests or lost under new neighborhoods. In the riverless reaches, archaeologists race against erosion, expansion, and groundwater pollution, eager to preserve what still lies just beneath their feet. Remote sensing and satellite imagery continue to uncover new sites, raising the tally of known Indus settlements to more than 2,600, stretching over 1,000 kilometers east to west. The silent heart of the Indus Valley still beats, half buried and half alive, a fusion of ancient dust and modern glory. Across the landscape, echoes of a lost world patiently await rediscovery, promising that every furrow, every brick, and every turn of the plow might yet uncover another chapter of our oldest city-building civilization. In the towns and villages of modern South Asia, the echoes of the Indus Valley pulse through daily life. Potters in Gujarat and Punjab shape vessels that mirror the curves and slipwork of Harappan wares, their wheels turning just as they did 5 millennia ago. Brickmakers in Sindh still use the ancient 4:1 ratio, dimensions pioneered in Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, to lend strength and durability to new homes and mosques. Urban planners, too, inherit a forgotten genius. Drainage systems in some towns descend from medieval models that in turn drew inspiration from the stone-lined channels and covered sewers of the Indus. In bustling city markets, you find beadwork and shell jewelry crafted almost unchanged from their Bronze Age counterparts. Even yoga, so integral to South Asian cultural identity, may trace its origins to the seated, meditative figures found carved on early Indus seals and amulets. Languages and gestures remember ancient roots. Dravidian terms linked to agriculture and trade echo those found in the region's most venerable dialects. Patterns of kinship and marriage preserve forms first seen in Indus skeleton arrangements and burial clusters. The pipal tree, worshipped as sacred in both Hinduism and Buddhism, still shelters town shrines and village drum circles, just as it did in ancient city courtyards. Daily life, commerce, even spirituality carry threads spun on Indus looms and inscribed with Indus signs. In bazaars, on rooftops, in the silent rituals of evening, the deep legacy of this vanished civilization whispers from hand to hand. The past shapes the present not as distant myth, but as lived reality. Dust and glory, alive in every detail. As dusk settles over the plains where rivers once thundered, the legacy of the Indus Valley civilization stands in golden silhouette. Its cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Dholavira, still rise in quiet defiance, mounds of brick and bone testifying to both the order they achieved and the enigmas they left behind. Here was a world governed not by monarchs or armies, but by shared standards, timeless craft, and a sense of urban discipline that shaped 1,000 years of stability and growth. Their greatness lies not in the grandeur of monuments, but in a civic order and ingenuity rarely matched even today. The Indus people gave the world its first city grids, flush toilets, and a script whose mystery remains unsolved. Proof that writing and knowledge can outlast even the empires that created them. Towns and households, not palaces, were the beating heart, granaries filled by collective effort, markets ruled by trust in weights and measures, baths and drains kept pure for generations. Their civilization collapsed not with a single blow, but with the slow passage of disaster, shifting rivers, biting drought, the long thinning of hope. Yet what remains is not only loss, but a legacy that endures in craft, language, ritual, and the very idea of the city as a place of shared purpose rather than conquest. The dust draws down, the gold of evening deepens, and for a moment the silent bricks glow once more, each one a witness to a world that built itself and vanished without a word. If you listen closely, as night falls, you can still hear the heartbeat of those first city dwellers echoed in distant wells, patient walls, and the rhythm of life that flourishes atop their scattered ruins. In the dust and glory, the Indus Valley civilization whispers its undying name.